I love this part. We're going to get kind of more into the nitty-gritty details of our friends Raja and Anita, and really kind of jump into the case study part of this, I would say. So, just some quick facts about Raj and Anita. Raj is 45. He's a senior director at Microsoft. His total compensation is about 500,000 a year. Anita is 44. She's a senior manager at Amazon. Her total comp's around 350,000. What's really important to them? What are Raj and Anita's goals? As Saloni just mentioned, they want to have the freedom to retire early. Taxes always on their mind, right? They want to know how they can reduce their taxes each year. They want to optimize their investments. They have some younger kiddos, so they want to plan for children's education costs. A lot of numbers on this page. I think it's helpful as we walk through this example, though, just to put some context behind everything. And so this is just a hypothetical look again, at Raj and Anita's net worth. You can see they have some cash savings in the bank. Just a couple things I think are worth pointing out. You can see Raj, since he works at Microsoft, he has a Microsoft stock plan account with a little over $360,000 in there that he's still holding on to some of that company stock. Anita's doing a similar thing with her Amazon stock. You can see they both have a couple of Roth IRAs down below. Each have their employer 401ks with Microsoft and Amazon. Started a health savings account, or HSA, for Raj through Microsoft. They've gotten started on some 529 education savings for the kids, so that's great. We can see their Redmond home, about 1.6 million there, so their total assets are right around 4 million. And then we think about liabilities. So it's the mortgage on their home at about just under 500,000. I think you can obviously tell, given that mortgage rate, they probably purchased that home at least 5 or more years ago. Still a little bit of student loans at 50,000, and so that brings their net worth to about 3.5 million. And while we're on the topic of net worth, why is it important? If you just go back a click here, Lars, why is it important why do we track net worth? Why do we want to have all these things laid out on one sheet? And it's because it's a great snapshot of where you're at today, what you've built up to this point, and it also helps kind of facilitate a lot of other planning conversations. We think about estate planning, insurance planning. Well, it's important to know what you have so you know what you need to protect, right? With insurance planning, it's if something crazy happens and someone comes after you for your money, right? How do we protect that? With
That's
the state
a good point on umbrella insurance.
Yeah,
right?
excess liability insurance. With estate planning, how do we think about transferring someone's wealth to the next generation in the most tax efficient way? I mean, here in the state of Washington, if your net worth is over 3.13 million now, then you start paying Washington state estate taxes starting at 10%.
And it's
brutal. And it
goes up fast from there. And so it's always important to keep track of where you're at least on an annual basis. And then the fun part, I think, is thinking about where are we going? Right? How can Raj and Anita achieve those goals? How can they get an A+ by utilizing the income that they have every year? And this is just a kind of a little breakdown of their compensation that we talked about on the last slide, but you can see their salary, bonus, stock income for both of them, and obviously they're up there in the highest tax bracket with their household income at about 850. And so how can they utilize this in the most efficient way, really? Well, one of them is going to be 401ks. So fortunately, both Microsoft and Amazon, for Raj and Anita, they have some pretty cool benefits within the 401k. The base contribution they can both make is going to be up to $23,500 per year. That's if you're under 50. And that could be either as a pre-tax contribution to the 401k or direct Roth. Again, given
you're making that kind of money,
given the money they're making, given their tax bracket, we certainly would want to see them doing pre-tax contributions.
And what is the reason for that?
The reason for that is that they're in the highest, 37% marginal tax bracket, right? So any dollars that they contribute to the 401k on a pre-tax basis, they are then no longer taxed on that money, right? It's lowering their taxable income. Again, highest marginal tax rate, it's a no-brainer, right? They'll each get a company match. So Microsoft matches half of those contributions. Amazon they'll match essentially 2% on Anita's salary. I think what a lot of folks maybe don't necessarily realize though is that there's actually a federal limit for total dollars that can go into a 401k each and every year between all sources, and it's $70,000 in 2025. And so Microsoft and Amazon and a handful of other tech companies around us, for that matter, have a pretty cool benefit that allow you to make after-tax contributions to the 401k to essentially fill up the rest of this bucket. And the cool part is those contributions can automatically be converted to Roth dollars. So in order to fully take advantage of Raj's Microsoft 401k and Anita's Amazon 401k, they can be socking away between their own contributions and the match just about $70,000 each per year. And these are really tax efficient accounts, right?
And this bucket that you're referring to is often called the mega backdoor run.
Exactly.
You might have heard of before, right?
Yeah. And for good reason, right?
Yeah.
That sounds to me like 401k on steroids, right? You can really
It really is.
It's we talked about disciplined saving, and this is one way you can set it, and then you don't have to think twice about it.
It's one of those changes you can make today that will have big impacts in the future.
Absolutely.
Another really cool benefit that Raj is eligible for as a level 67 at Microsoft is deferred compensation.
And this one, I'll just chime in. This one is huge in terms of its ability, even compared to the 401k, its ability to help from a tax perspective. You want to talk 401k on steroids.
Yeah.
This is the real deal here. So
yeah. And
what do they call GOAT? God of all times?
Yeah, the greatest of all time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I like that. I'll walk through just kind of how deferred compensation plans work in general. So you think about, again, income in a given year. Raj has his salary, he has a bonus, and then he has a lot of Microsoft stock as income as well. What deferred compensation allows him to do each and every year is he can defer up to 75% of his salary and up to 100% of his bonus, meaning that he can just say, I don't want to receive that income this year. That deferred money essentially goes into an investment account like a 401k. It's a deferred compensation account, and it can then be invested and grow for the future. At that point, you think out into retirement, that's when you can then receive that money. Raj can receive that money back to him. And obviously the whole idea here is, again, today, their family's making $850,000. They're being taxed at the highest possible rate. You think about retirement, they're both no longer working. There's, little to no income. Makes a lot of sense to receive that money then.
And I think you think about, to put some numbers around this at a very high level, with the 401k, you can put 23,500 in, and you're not paying taxes on that, right? Which is spectacular. Now, 23,500 is a lot of money to sock away, but you think about how much might you be able to put into deferred comp if you're putting 100% of your bonus and up to 75% of your salary. I'll tell you, if you're working at Microsoft and you're level 67 or above, it's almost certainly a lot more than 23,500. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a planning tool that's not just a Microsoft, plan, but Amazon doesn't offer it. Many other tech companies don't offer it. Microsoft does, but again, you have to be level 67 and above in order to access it at Microsoft. So it's a little bit of a special planning tool for those that are a little higher up the company, right?
Yeah.
And I would say that it is a tax saving tools, but in order for you to implement it yourself, go back to the cash flow that we talked about. Make sure that everything is tracking well, because you're essentially making your paycheck very, very small.
A lot of planning that goes into it.
Oh yeah.
A lot of planning.
Yeah. And so kind of on that point, right? If you can defer a whole bunch of income through deferred compensation, if you want to be maxing out the 401k, put in close to $70,000 each into those plans, that's a lot of money that you then all of a sudden are not receiving on your biweekly paycheck, right? Yeah. And kind of a way that we can get around that, or a way that we can utilize that, is kind of flip the mindset of how you handle your income. So what we see a lot of folks do, and what, perhaps Raj and Anita are doing now, is they get their salary, they get maybe, cash bonuses, and they typically use that to cover their living expenses, right? Bills, monthly spending. and then they get their RSUs, their Microsoft stock, their Amazon stock. Um, and I think the easiest thing to do there is you just receive that in your Fidelity account and you don't touch it because you just say, hey,
Forget about it.
Yeah.
that's great. They've given me
Yeah.
stock. It's building up in that account and all is good. But really, if we want to leverage these extremely tax efficient company benefits that they have, it's kind of flipping that mindset again and getting in the habit of actually selling those RSUs on a quarterly basis when they come in
Mhm.
and using that for cash flow to cover living expenses. Because these other benefits, again, 401k, the mega backdoor Roth, deferred comp, health savings accounts, all of those contributions have to come from salary and bonus. And so you start to realize, hey, I can actually use these RSUs to live off of, and I can start taking advantage of all these really, really tax efficient accounts from my salary and bonus.
And if you think about that, it's not only saving taxes today, you're also setting yourself up for success for future too. Because mega backdoor Roth, the distributions that come out of those accounts in retirement years are not taxed. Those health savings account, the money that comes out is not taxed. Your deferred compensation payouts and 401k are going to be taxed, but then you have those different levers that you can play around with
Probably, hopefully in a lower tax bracket,
to
right?
keep you in that below that threshold.
Yeah. And then kind of coming back to the cash flow details, right? It's important to understand your own cash flow because, even with the stock income, you want to make sure that you can afford to do all these things, and still, receive the cash flow at the end of the day that you need to cover your living expenses. And so this is just, kind of a high level breakdown. Again, you have the gross income up top with, call it the 850 for Raj and Anita. And then this is an example of them really maxing out these benefits. So maxing out their 401ks, and then actually Raj doing some deferrals, deferring 100% of his bonus and 30% of his salary. So you can see right out of payroll, there's a lot of money coming out for both of them, really. Obviously, we have to assume some taxes on all this income as well. And so it's really important to then understand what is the net cash flow or take home pay after these company benefits are maxed out. And does it still work? And then obviously you think about what are those living expenses. And here we just see, about 12,000 a month for them in general expenses. They have the mortgage as well, 3,000 a month, and then some fun travel every year for the family. So, and you can see there's still an excess cash flow at the end of the day when we look at this on an annual basis. So it works. This is a fun, I think, little side-by-side comparison and kind of bringing it back to scoring Raj and Anita, right? This is what they were doing. They were maxing out their pre-tax 401ks. We like that.
Yeah.
No after-tax or mega backdoor Roth 401k contributions, so some room for improvement there. Doing the health savings account, we like that. Weren't doing deferred compensation, weren't doing standard backdoor Roth contributions, which is also an option for some folks out there. They had been doing some 529 college education savings. And you can see a lot of excess cash flow, right? Because they weren't using some of those company benefits, their bottom line cash flow was really high. And I think really what that represents is probably the company stock that they were receiving and not selling, right? And that's why if we think back to that net worth, you saw Raj had a good chunk of Microsoft stock in his Fidelity account, and Anita had a good chunk of Amazon stock. And so,
And that explains the grade B. Like that's why.
I would say this is a B, right?
Yep.
It's
okay.
It's okay.
Yeah. They're pretty concentrated, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It could be worse.
And so what would the A plus scenario look like? And it's essentially what we just talked through, right? So continuing to maximize the pre-tax 401ks, them both taking advantage of the mega backdoor Roth 401k, continuing to max out the health savings account. We see that 30% salary deferral, 100% bonus deferral. They can each do $7,000 into a Roth via the standard backdoor Roth contributions. Optimizing college savings, based on just planning for their kids, kind of college start dates, right? And then still leaves that excess cash flow of call it 150,000 at the end of the day. I think what's really cool is you'll notice total savings on the B scenario versus the A plus scenario. Well, it's actually higher on the right-hand side. And why is that? And the reason is because of deferred compensation, that's lowering their taxes by about $44,000 in that year,
Mhm.
which means that is $44,000 more of cash flow that they are receiving that can be saved, right?
And I think to be clear here, this total household savings is the excess cash flow plus all the money that they've already
Oh yeah.
saved, right?
Yeah.
So this is 150,000 excess cash flow plus all of this money in savings. We add those numbers up and we have an extra 45,000 bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, meaningful.
Yeah.
When we ask folks, are you saving enough? Then folks to the left will say, yeah, we think we are saving enough because we are maxing out our 401k. But then you go to the right, to get to A plus is a hard uphill battle, but we think folks can do it. And for all the reasons that we mentioned,
Yep.
you should be getting A plus.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, but just some quick notes there, not only are they reducing their taxes on the right-hand scenario by about 44,000, they're also increasing their annual Roth savings by 88,000, which again, you think about Roth accounts, right? That's essentially the most tax
How do you feel in 20 years about that? Pretty good.
the most tax advantage account there is, right? That money grows tax free. It's never taxed again. It's really
Yep.
that golden nest egg. So
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty cool.
and so, at the end of the day, it's Raj and Anita figuring out ways to reduce their tax bill, diversify their portfolio, right? Utilizing those RSUs, and building out that early retirement plan, right?
Investment planning. I get to chat for just a moment here. So, from a big picture perspective, we obviously read headlines. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'll be online or I'll have the TV on and I'll see headlines. And most of the time, those headlines are not great, right? What do they say that if it bleeds, it leads, right? And so often, whenever you're reading headlines, it's often a lot of bad news. And I think it's really easy. If we were to have gone back 12 months and I showed you, hey, here's what the next 12 months of headlines are going to look like, you might be a little scared. And you might say, well, let's just not invest. Let's go to cash until things calm down. And I say this because this is what we hear from clients who
All
are
the time.
on occasion, I'm worried about what I see in the headlines. And so I'm thinking maybe now's the time to move to cash. We don't hear this very often because I think that we've trained folks that we work with to not take this approach. But I think it's good from a historical context perspective to be able to look back 55 years and to say, if you invested $1 55 years ago, what would that be worth today? And that $1 would have grown to about 126 bucks, $126. And what are the headlines and what would you have had to have stomach along the way, right? Oil prices going up and down, the death of equities, oil embargoes, invasion of Kuwait, Asian currency crisis, Russian financial crisis. We got the dot-com boom. We have 9/11, Eurozone debt crisis, subprime mortgage crisis, Hurricane Rita and Katrina, S&P down in 2008. Call it 46%, right? Then just more recently, 2020, the market dropped about 30% in 30 days, right? And then we go through 2022, which is one of the worst years ever for a balanced investor because bonds got hit harder than they've ever been hit. And you turn on the news, today, and there's any given number of things today to be worried about and afraid of, right? And yet we have to take the long-term approach, especially with our investments, and we have to not let the emotions of the world impact the way in which our plan is set for the future. Because I think most of the people on this are probably not in their late 70s or in their 80s. I'm guessing that most people on this call are somewhere between, I'll say 35 and 55, maybe a little older, maybe a little bit younger, but we have years and decades ahead of us, and we need to be able to build a plan that looks out to the future, right? The other thing, though, is that from an investment perspective and from a landscape perspective, times change. And so, what are we looking at right here? We're looking at every 5 years, what are the 10 biggest companies in the S&P 500, call it, right? Or in, I should say not the S&P 500, but what are the, call it, what are the 10 biggest companies, right? What are the 10 biggest companies in the US? And so right now, and I think it's pretty easy for a lot of people to kind of reel off, we call them the Mag 7. You think about Apple, you think about Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, which is Google. You think about Tesla, Meta, Facebook. Think about Broadcom, Berkshire Hathaway, you think about Eli Lilly. These are massive companies, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if a number of people on this call look up there and you say, hey, I work for that company, which is great, right? Now it's so interesting because if you go back to 1980, what were the biggest companies in 1980? You've got IBM, AT&T, Exxon, General Motors, is it Amoco?
Amoco.
Amoco? I don't even know how to pronounce this
That
one.
says something.
Yeah, it says something, right? You got Mobil, which would become Exxon Mobil later. You've got GE, Chevron, Atlantic Richfield, and you've got Shell, right? And you think back in the day, you've heard of the term the Nifty 50. So maybe it wasn't the Mag 7, but it was the Nifty 50 that dominated the market. And a lot of people just said, I'm just going to invest in the Nifty 50 because these are stalwarts of the market that I can trust. And yet, back in those days, and then you go forward 5 years and DuPont, Sears, and Kodak joined the top 10. And times change, right? Kodak isn't a company anymore. Sears is not a company anymore, right? And yet it's so easy to just look at those biggest companies and say, hey, based on where we are right now, we're going to project out the next
30,
5,
40.
10, 40, 50 years. And hey, are these going to be the biggest companies? From 2000 to today, the only company that is one of the 10 biggest today that also was 25 years ago was Microsoft. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if we have a number of Microsoft employees on this call. Microsoft, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, has been an incredible company to work for, has continued to innovate. But you think about Cisco, you think about, Lucent Technologies, you think about Time Warner. I think this is just to say that we can't just put all of our eggs in one basket. Times change. And even if we work for these companies, and I'm not saying that these are not great companies that will continue to be successful, but I guess what I'm saying is that we want to invest in everything because if we just invested in the top 10 companies in 2000, you know what we wouldn't have been investing in? Amazon, right? We wouldn't have been investing in Amazon. We wouldn't have been investing in Google when it went public. We wouldn't have been investing in Facebook when it went public. We wouldn't have been investing in any of these companies that have become what they've become. How do we make sure that we invest in the winners of tomorrow? By investing in everything today, right? Because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what the biggest companies of the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years are. But we want to make sure we invest in those best companies, and so we invest in everything. And so I think that this is, a two-part comment. Number one, diversification works because it means that you invest in everything, which includes the winners. And number two, we want to make sure that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket, like putting all of our eggs in our company stock, because what if we were working at Cisco? Back in the day, wow, how could we not invest in Cisco? It represents 4% of the US market, right? And yet what's happened to Cisco? How can we not put all of our money in Sears? It's one of the biggest companies in the country, and we just see nothing but success for Sears going forward. I'm not saying that Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, you name it. I'm not saying that these aren't going to be great companies. I'm just saying we don't want all of our eggs in one basket because if we do have all of our eggs in one basket and times change, if all of a sudden a digital camera comes about and Kodak is just not as valuable of a company, we want to make sure that we have our bases covered and our risks spread out. Big takeaway. So,
And to your point, Lars,
yep.
folks working for those big 7 companies that are also on the call, we have to remember and remind them that your paycheck also comes from that company. Your 401k plan is also from that company.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot is already tied to the company you're working for. And think of those RSUs that you receive every quarter as free cash that your company is giving you. And every time, and this is something we tell to our clients, if your company gave you $10,000 every quarter, I'm making up this number here, and asked you do what you want with it, ask yourself this question: would you still buy the company that you work for? If the answer is no, then it's don't let your RSUs accumulate.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Very well said. Thank you, Lars. Moving on to those all 5 things that need to move in tandem, estate and insurance planning is an important part of your financial plan. You see on the screen here, we have divided estate planning in 3 tiers, level 1, level 2, level 3. At a minimum, for Raj and Anita, we would expect them to have wills in place.
Mhm.
They have young kids. At a minimum, if something was to happen to them, we don't want state to come in and dictate who takes the kids. So having those wills, documents, and established guardianship is super important. Then comes your power of attorney documents, which tells if you are incapacitated at some point in time, then who makes decision, who signs those financial power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney. Depending on your net worth, where you are, you may need revocable trust, some sort of trust planning. If you have rental properties out of state, it makes sense to consider trusts. It makes it easy for, again, we are thinking 10, 15, 20, 50 years in the future when you're gone, how your wealth is managed from that point. And there are some advanced family planning tools which may be applicable to you or not, but we just want to put it out there so you're thinking about these things. We can go to next slide. One thing I want to talk about here is, sorry, on the previous slide.
There we go. Okay. Passed it. Okay, Saloni.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Wealth transfer is probably important to all of us, how we move our wealth to kids so they are not paying taxes. I think Alex pointed out in Washington State, the limit is 3 million. If anything above 3 million goes to your heirs, then they pay taxes, and the taxes become pretty steep with the recent law changes in Washington State. Then there are federal estate tax exemption, which is the limit is pretty high that probably we don't have to think about. So Roth accounts, mega backdoor Roth, and also backdoor Roth is something to think about as a wealth transfer tool and strategy. And even in your retirement years, when you don't have a paycheck, your income tax bracket is really low, then you can think about moving some of your assets into Roth account as part of that wealth transfer strategy.
I love seeing people retire at 58 years old and have a number of years of basically no income. So they've saved all of this money and they've gotten the tax breaks in their 401k pre-tax for all these years. And then they say, great, let's fill up the 10 and 12% tax bracket right now because we're in that window, right? So there's a lot of cool planning that you can do there.
And again, these are tiny steps to get you to A plus. Yeah, let's go to tax planning. Tax bracket optimization, like we talked, it is going to be the biggest and biggest bill you will face in your life. The steps that you can take today, tomorrow, and how you can continue to manage your tax bracket is going to be so important. While you're working, utilize all the company benefits available to you. Alex pointed out how you can leverage mega backdoor Roth, deferred compensation if you're eligible, and investing in those tax advantaged account is managing tax bracket. Again, it may seem like you're making your paycheck smaller today, and it's hard to see the value, but it really works. When you're retired, be mindful of where you're pulling your money from. If it is coming from Roth account, health savings account, or pre-tax account, everything is taxed differently. Your retirement accounts, which is 401k, is taxed as your ordinary income, which is if you are in 20%, then you pay 20% taxes. So how do you balance that with pulling money from Roth accounts, which are not taxed? So that is, again, managing your tax bracket. One thing to think about from capital gains, if you have accumulated single stocks, like Lars pointed out, Microsoft has been up there for a while.
Mhm.
And if you have accumulated some of those Microsoft shares, chances are you have inbuilt gains in those. How do you meaningfully get out of those shares while managing your tax bracket is also important. So look at those tax lots, how to sell, look into direct index strategy. We won't go into detail for that on this call, but this
We
is
spend a whole separate hour
Oh, yeah.
just
just
on
talking
that.
about,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's helpful to manage your tax bracket. Lastly, if you are charitably inclined, you can use some of your appreciated shares to fund your donor advised fund or some sort of charitable intent with that.